The movie begins in space with the spaceship Avalon traveling to the colony world of Homestead, while the inhabitants of Earth are fleeing in large numbers. The 5,000 passengers and the crew will spend the entire 120-year journey in hibernation pods. The trip has been ongoing for 30 years. Power is redirected to the forward shields while the spacecraft sails through a meteor storm. When the ship collides with a massive meteor, the power blinks. Red alert screens appear in the control area, and everything soon returns to normal. Something terrible has occurred. A cheerful computer voice awakens mechanical engineer Jim Preston and informs him that they are
Wait, what?
on their way to Homestead 2. He is informed that it is typical to feel weak and bewildered. After hibernating, the computer directs him to his cabin, where he sleeps. After scanning the wristband on his arm, the following morning, he gets out of bed, mulls over what to wear to meet other travelers,
Just own it. Own it, Jim. You got a cool jacket.
and walks into a cafeteria by himself. He attends a colonist orientation session on Homestead, but he is the only one present.
Where is everybody?
The jovial computer-generated instructor is baffled by his query as to why none else is present. When Jim visits the main concourse, the information kiosk is unable to assist him.
You gotta be kidding me.
He locates a place of business from which he may communicate with the Homestead Company, but is forewarned that doing so will be costly. When he sends a message asking for assistance because he is the only one awake, he learns that it will take 15 years for anyone on Earth to receive it.
Message will arrive in 19 years.
Wait, what?
He is unable to enter the command room or the section where the crew pods are located to attempt and rouse up someone for assistance. He does not have the necessary clearance because of his bracelet. Jim comes into an artificially intelligent bartender named Arthur, Michael Sheen. But the robot only offers bartender advice, such as, if you don't like where you are, change things. Jim travels in general class, which has a more modest accommodation, and upgrades to a suite, which has superior facilities. Jim uses the ship's entertainment options for a year, but without any other people. He grows increasingly lonely. He proceeds to a location where people can don spacesuits and leave the ship while still being securely linked to it. Without a spacesuit, Jim considers opening the airlock to commit himself but stops himself and enters the pod area instead. He stumbles across a pod that contains Aurora Lane, Jennifer Lawrence, a stunning woman. He checks out the passenger list she had created before the ship sailed. She is a journalist who is visiting Homestead to have an experience and discover the motivations behind colonists. He thinks she is perfect because he reads her novels. After a year alone, he struggles with whether to wake her up even though doing so will condemn her to die on the ship. However, he can no longer bear the loneliness, so he uses her pod to manually wake her up while concealing so that she cannot see him. Aurora is awakened by the same upbeat computer program. The following morning, Aurora awakens by herself and travels to the main concourse, where she runs into Jim. He is honest with her about how long he has been awake, but he is silent about waking her up. The android bartender Arthur has agreed to his request not to inform Aurora what he has done.
I'm not just a bartender, I'm a gentleman.
Every day, Aurora and Jim talk about possible ways to fix the pods. While swimming, running, and starting her story, Aurora, she asks Jim why he left Earth, and he replies that he likes to make and fix things, whereas on Earth, when anything breaks and isn't fixed, it is replaced. He desires to live in a home that he constructs himself. She intended to travel to the colony, spend a year there interviewing colonists about their motivations for leaving Earth, and then return to the planet. His standard clearance does not allow him to get the sumptuous breakfasts that Aurora, a gold-class passenger, can order for him. After some time of getting to know one another, Aurora agrees to Jim's invitation to go on a date. After their meal, he leads her into the room with the spacesuits, where there are 2 suits. They both put on their suits and leave the room. Aurora is happy to return inside, and they enter Jim's cabin to share a passionate embrace. They enjoy their schedule of exercising, stargazing, and using the dining and entertainment options provided by the ship. When Aurora's birthday comes around again, Jim has a special surprise planned for her, a ring he made himself. Jim agrees when Aurora tells him they have no secrets as they enter the pub. Jim is unaware that Arthur will take this to mean that Jim has admitted to waking Aurora up. Arthur tells Aurora what a wise decision it was for Jim to choose her as the person to wake her up as Jim enters the men's room. Jim is told to stay away from Aurora because she is upset and enraged. She breaks into his cabin one night while he is sleeping and beats him with her fists. While she's running, Jim uses a ship's intercom to try and explain himself, but Aurora screams that Jim took her life. While all of this is going on, the control room is gradually receiving more and more alarms about system faults. Jim and Aurora have picked up on minor issues, such as the cleaning robot's malfunctioning systems. The meteor crash occurred 2 years ago. Gus Mancuso, Lawrence Fishburne, a deck crew chief who has woken up early, shows up on the concourse one day. He explains that something very serious is wrong because hibernation pods have never failed before. They access the command center using his wristband and discover that the ship's automatic diagnostics have failed, necessitating a human inspection of each deck. There is a significant gravity failure and Aurora nearly drowns in the pool while Gus conducts experiments prior to this being possible. When Gus discovers cascading failures, the computer can create a chronology that reveals the first failure occurred 2 years prior. Gus concludes that the initial failures resulted in power diversions to attempt and re-equalize the load. But, as the load grew too great, more and more failures occurred. The whole crew and passengers will perish since the ship itself could perish in space. They will need to perform a manual inspection to determine where the first afflicted region was, which was in the main engine area. Gus passes out at this moment, and Jim and Aurora take him to the hospital where they place him in a medical auto-diagnostic scanner. His entire body is covered with necrosis, and the failing hibernation pod has made death inevitable. He dons his uniform and gets ready to pass away while also giving Jim and Aurora his wristbands so they can enter the regions of the ship where they need to go in order to make repairs. Jim and Aurora discover a meteorite-made hole in engineering that cuts through some crucial regions. Due to a hole in the hull, Aurora is almost sucked out as they open one entrance. Jim pushes a tablet to her, and she blocks the hole with it. Jim then further seals the hole with a liquid sealant. They discover that the fusion engine exhaust needs to be manually evacuated after the space becomes pressurized. Jim needs to put on a spacesuit and go outside to fix it since the manual override isn't going to work. He ultimately needs to enter the exhaust channel to open a flap, but unless Jim holds it open, the manual vent won't function. Aurora fights with Jim over the radio out of desperation to keep him around, but she pushes the lever. Jim is pushed away, his tether snaps, and his suit is damaged. He bids Aurora farewell. She rushes to don a spacesuit before going in search of him. Jim is retrieved by her snagging his leash, but when they enter, he is not awake. Jim is declared dead by the auto dock as she drags him to the hospital. Gus' wristband and override code are used by Aurora to successfully command the machine to revive Jim. She feels relieved and ecstatic to learn that he is alive. Later, everything aboard the ship has returned to normal. Jim is working on the auto dock and informs Aurora that he discovered a way to rehibernate her in the hospital using the command override, but he would be returning on his own. Aurora decides to stay awake with Jim and build a life with him on the ship after realizing she would never see him again. She accepts the temporary engagement ring he had earlier presented to her. 88 years later. As the ship nears its destination, the captain and crew notice a large tree, a lot of trailing vines and flora, birds fluttering, and a cabin, which may contain Jim and Aurora's grandchildren. The narration of Aurora is reading the passengers her narrative and describing how they established a decent life for themselves where they were. Thank you for watching. We will be posting more videos. Thank you for hiding, like, and for subscribing.